Hello and welcome to today's session on returning to the workforce in Canada. We're going to review some tips and tricks for you today for returning to Canada from OutCan and how you can prepare yourself both before you leave, things you can do from here in Europe, and what to do when you return. So to start, we want to look at the job search method in general. So I'm going to shape today's presentation around the steps in any job search, whether you're returning to Canada or not. So when you're conducting a job search, you always want to start by learning about the labor market. So the labor market in general, but more specifically, the labor market in the location where you'll be working, especially important for military spouses, where we're just jumping back and forth between locations in Canada and locations outside of Canada. And we're not necessarily already familiar with where we're going to be. So you want to make sure that you know the community, you know the kind of jobs available. Next is learning how to highlight your potential for that market. Then you want to establish a strategy for reaching out to potential employers, to reaching out to a network, building a network, and making sure you have all the contacts you need to help you with your job search. Then you need to look of course, at applying to jobs, the very important part. And that includes preparing and or updating your resume and your cover letters. And then the final stage being interviewing. Those last two, of course, you probably already know, are quite intense and are sessions on their own. I'm going to touch on both, about how to prep and update resumes and cover letters, how to be successful in interviews, but I can't in this one session cover even close to everything that you would need to know. We have recorded sessions on these topics already, and we often offer live ones, so you can certainly follow up and get more information on that. So let's look then at the labor market. So why do you want to know the labor market? Now, as we've said, you need to understand where you're going to be. You need to understand what jobs are available. So researching the labor market is important because it helps you know the types of jobs that should be available in your area of interest in your new location. It helps you to better understand the needs of employers in that location. And this can help you to validate the tasks or skills that you bring to the table and those that you may not have that would be required as well. And it helps you to internalize the requirements and the terms used by employers in the location, any specifics about that area that are important to know before you apply, and all the other details that will help you to create your application package, all the things that you need to think about before you can even begin to ask questions to people in your network and to update your resume and your cover letter. So where do you find information about the labor market? There's lots of websites online where you can look. It will also depend on where you're going, what kind of work you do, and what sort of resources are available for that. So first of all, the Government of Canada Job Bank website is a very impressive resource. I've got the URL at the bottom of the page there, and you can look up information by occupation. You can look it up by occupation and location. You can even, if you're earlier in the stage or you're looking at a change, you can look up different job descriptions, different industries, and see what kind of jobs might be available if you haven't actually got a target yet. Statistics Canada has a lot of information about the labor market in various areas, about jobs, trends, which areas are growing, which are contracting, which is important to know as well. Job search engines and websites can also often have information other than simply, job postings, so they're great places to look. Professional associations, if you belong to one, will have information on anything from job boards and what's available right now, but also again trends and skills that are needed in certain provinces, certain communities. So all things that can help you to figure out what's available in the location you're headed to. And of course, you're looking at the labor market so that you can identify job leads. And one way to look at the job market is that idea of the iceberg, right? So the amount that you see above the waterline and the amount below the waterline. That above the waterline is everything that's visible. So it's all the jobs posted on a job bank, on a website, on a company website, or etc. Generally, historically speaking, if you look at websites about job searches, if you look at articles, things you might have read, it's typically been said that only about 20% of jobs available are ever posted, and that the other 80% are they're filled internally. They're never actually official. People, I find in the last, I don't know, maybe year or two, career professionals, career coaches are starting to question those numbers. I think those numbers might have come from a certain snapshot in time, but there also might have been some bias in putting those numbers together to make it sound just that little bit scarier and make it sound a little bit more important to network. I still think that there are a large number of jobs not posted, but if, for example, you're working in government, they can't just fill a posting. They can't just decide not to post a job and just take somebody from the next department or get their friend in. There are certain industries and organizations where every job is going to be posted. So that's one thing to think about. And just in general, often, yes, your network will help you find the lead to the job, but the job is still going to be posted. So you don't have to necessarily have the network to find it. So I still like to bring up this idea of the 20-80 ratio, only 20% of jobs are ever posted, but I think in reality, that is probably closer to a 50-50. So there's still a lot of jobs that don't get shared and just get filled before they're ever posted. I just don't think it's 20 and 80%. But again, just coming back to this idea, what is showing above the waterline in the iceberg analysis, whether it's 20 or 50 or more percent, that's your first and most obvious place to find job leads, of course. So where do you find them? You want to look at online job search engines. You want to look at either visiting companies, like actual physical locations of a company, but also virtual. So going to websites, going to Facebook pages, all kinds of places that they might post openings. Newspaper ads, both actually physical paper, which you don't get as much anymore, and virtual ads. Going through employment agencies and going to career and employment fairs. Some great spots to start when you're looking for job leads are the main, national and international job sites. The Canada job site, LinkedIn, Indeed, Monster. There are industry-specific sites. If you're a nurse, if you're a teacher, you can look up, teaching jobs Ontario, teaching jobs British Columbia, and see what various sites are out there. Company-specific sites, especially larger companies, will have pages or even whole sections of their website devoted to careers. And also professional associations often will also list openings in the area. Sometimes they actually just link out to another one of these, previously mentioned sites, but lots of places to find jobs online to get yourself started. And there's also sites now specifically targeting remote work. And we know as military spouses, as military family members, remote work can be very attractive. It's not for everyone for sure, but it can help you to move from posting to posting if you only have to work from home to begin with. If your job does not require a physical location and you can take it anywhere, then that's going to be a huge bonus. So some of the better places to find remote work are the sites that I've listed here: remotehabits.com, dailyremote.com, remoteok.io, and weworkremotely.com. These are just a few of the sites. They're the ones that I found that have sort of the most jobs and also the most sort of interesting and variety of jobs. Most of the sites tend to be either US based or global. So there's not always a lot of specifically Canadian jobs listed, but some of them you don't need to, you can be anywhere in the world to do, so they don't necessarily have to be a Canadian job. And others do need you to be Canadian because they're a Canadian company and taxes and et cetera require you to be there. So I tried to pick the ones that you might have the most success with. Then we want to look at, continuing on the idea of identifying job leads. What about all the other jobs? All the ones below the waterline, the ones that are not advertised, the ones that you just don't know about. And it might not be 80%, maybe it's 50%, maybe it's only 30 or 40. The point being, there are definitely jobs out there that are not going to be posted, then you're not going to find them online. So what do you do with those and how do you find them? Essentially, what you want to be doing is building your network, talking to people, contacting companies, talking to family, friends, former schoolmates, anyone who you can let know that you're looking for work and the type of work that you're looking for. You can contact companies that are of interest to you, even if they don't have a job currently posted. You might want to set up an informational interview with them and start developing just connections. Talk to them about what they need, talk to them about what you offer. It could be 3 to 6 months before they have a job that actually fits what you do, but now you're in their database, you're in their memory as someone who does this. And so when the need comes up, you're there. And you can network and discuss your job search with pretty much everyone you know. I mean, without overdoing it, without boring people, without asking too much. But you want them to know that you're looking, that you're returning to a certain community, that you are really looking to maybe work back at the place where you before or at a different company. The more they know, the more that they can help you. People often will dismiss a lot of people in their network thinking that they would never be able to help you, but it isn't necessarily that one person. Like your neighbor might not work in the same field as you. They might not work at all. They could be retired. They could be a stay-at-home mom for the last 10 years, but you don't necessarily know who they know. So you never know what conversation they will be in when they find out that somebody is looking to hire a teacher or an LPN or a writer, an editor. So the more people know who you are and what you do, the more likely they are able to help you. So step 2 in our job search process was that idea of highlighting your potential. The general idea here is both that, once you know what the labor market in your area offers, and once you know what you want to do and what skills you offer, you can start to put together an application. So understanding the labor market is only one part of that, and the other part is understanding yourself and your potential. And it sounds obvious, except it's the one step that most people skip. And if you haven't thought this out properly, and if you're not planning properly for what you offer to the labor market, you're potentially going to first undersell yourself and also miss some opportunities that you just never considered. So there are 4 sort of steps to this idea of a self-reflection and figuring out who you are and what you offer. You want to start with that reflection, that who am I? And this involves taking stock of the professional qualifications and skills that you already have, that you already gained through experience or training, but then also determining your interests, your desires, your preferences for the type of work that you want to do. And that includes not just your profession, but also, do you want to work remotely or not? Do you want to work part-time, contract, full-time, evenings, weekends, all of those things? So you can look at both what your previous career path looked like, but not just stopping there, not assuming that's what you have to pick up again. So what did your previous career look like? What do you want to continue from that? And what would you like to change? And then you want to do a bit of a self-orientation. So where do you want to get to from here? And at this point, you want to consider your options and formulate a goal to pursue. So what are your goals? What direction do you want to develop? Are you looking for a step up, step sideways? Is there a certain title or status that you're looking for? So all of those things. Where are you now in your career? Or if you've been off for a while, where were you when you left your career? Where do you want to go now? The next stage being the self-management. So what should you do? Do you need to increase your skills to get to this new stage, if you're looking to maybe sidestep and do a bit of a career change, or to step up into a higher level of management or supervision, do you have everything you need to get there? And if not, what do you need to do in the meantime? You might need to improve language skills or take a technical course. There's lots of different possibilities. Because of that, in this stage specifically, you really want to just be smart about setting your goals. So make sure that they're specific and achievable. Where do you need to improve your competencies and skills? Specifically, what kind of education and training is necessary to do that? What steps do you need to take? How much time or money do you need to invest to get there? And your answer to all of those might be none. You might already have everything you need to make that next step, but make sure you think about it regardless. Even if you think you have everything, make sure you're not forgetting anything is the key. And then the final step being the self-marketing, because again, we're talking about highlighting your potential. So take those first 3 steps to understand your potential, and then get into, how do you present your strengths? Are you presenting as confident, as competent? How do you best market those skills? And a lot of that is going to come into play when we talk about, of course, the resume and cover letter, but also when you think about networking. So continue the idea of this self-analysis and self-reflection by focusing on connecting the factors between your strengths, your skills, your experience, and the type of position that you're interested in. So you can do this by looking at your education, your accumulated experience, your knowledge, your personality traits. How well does your personality fit in, maybe a very busy office setting or career setting versus a slower paced, perhaps remote based, perhaps very different kind of setting. And then any other special factors that make you the ideal candidate for any job. And though that's going to vary a lot, for that's going to vary so much depending just on you and what you've done and what you want to do. So making sure that you're taking notes, you're thinking, you're figuring out how all of these things connect. How do you present yourself to an employer as the perfect person for this job because of your education, your experience, your knowledge, your personality, and if applicable, any other special factors. So then you get to step 3, and we're talking about networking and contacting people. So I find that a lot of job seekers tend to completely misunderstand the idea of networking. So I really would like to start with this idea of what is networking. It is essentially the act of interacting with others to exchange information, develop professional and or social contacts. And it is important no matter what field you work in. It is definitely more important to some than others, but it's really about making sure that you have a network of people around to share information with, to support, to have them support you, to ask questions when you have them. So whether you're a student, a freelancer, a full-time employee, a government employee, knowing how to network effectively and properly can open doors for you all the time, whether it's an actual job or knowing about training in advance so that you can get the right training. People in your network are where you get your information, regardless of what the actual goal is in the end. When you're outbound, of course, networking is more difficult, but it's not impossible. You can network, again, when you talk about you never know who can help you, network with the people here first, because you don't know who might be able to help you find a job in your new location. You don't know who's been there already or who's going to the same location as you when you head back. But also between email, LinkedIn, Twitter, online job fairs, all the events that existed anyway, but have now increased exponentially, really, with the COVID pandemic. There are so many tools and options out there to help you network for a job in Canada, even though you're still in Europe. So why network? Which is the other question that I get, because again, a lot of people don't understand why it's important to them. They understand why it's important to someone else. If you're in sales, if you need to find clients, but if you're an admin worker in a large corporate office and you're happy there, why network? I mean, the main goal that we talk about when we talk about job search is that networking will help you uncover those 50 to 80% of jobs that are not ever listed, the ones that get filled before they ever get there. But networking also just helps you learn more about your chosen career field. You find out what other people doing similar jobs somewhere else do and learn and want, and that can help you become better at your job. It allows you to get advice, to whether it's through informational interviews, which are formal, or just from casual interactions online, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, wherever you might be. Networking is a job searcher's market research in a lot of ways. It helps you gather information about different jobs, different companies, and different industries. And this information helps you develop more effective job search skills and helps you to find leads. It doesn't necessarily get you a job. It's not as simple as that. Like if you know the right person, you get the job, which again is sort of that myth that a lot of people go by. It can help. It can help absolutely, but you still have to get the job yourself. Knowing people helps to get you in the door. It helps to get you an interview. It helps to get you perhaps to the top of the list. You still have to earn the job yourself. One key sort of aspect of networking is that idea of you're asking everybody you know to help provide leads and to help provide contacts. Who do you know who might have jobs in my field? Who do you know who is looking for somebody with my expertise? Those kinds of questions. And the idea is to increase the number of people that you know who might be able to help you get the job you want or find the information you want. And it's really just increasing your web of influence, but also your web of information. So how and where do you network? Obviously, there's the sort of more traditional at events, by volunteering, by going to conferences and seminars. And a lot of the more traditional places and ways to network are not available to us right now because of COVID, but also not available to us right now because we're in Europe and the jobs that we're looking for are in Canada. But again, you can network online, you can attend webinars with people in your industry. You might be there to learn a skill or to talk about an event or an upcoming activity in your field. But as you know, if you've ever attended a webinar, there's the time before and after when people just chat. And so you're going to meet people and you're going to continue to meet people if you continue to attend. You can attend online job fairs and career information sessions. You can set up informational interviews with people in either your target companies or just other people of influence in your career. And those can be held online via Zoom, via WebEx, via Teams. And just being, again, on social media is a form of networking. Your Facebook profile might never have been set up with the purpose of career networking, but it's still your network. It's still everybody that you know, and it also connects you to people that they know. So if you're talking on Facebook, just less formally about the fact that, hey, I'm returning to Ottawa later this summer and can't wait to get back into the workplace. If you know anybody looking to hire an editor, let me know. And there you go. You're networking on Facebook, and it's that easy. A few quick networking do's and don'ts. As I said, I just gave the example, networking can be incredibly easy, but you just want to make sure that you're doing it right, that you're following up a bit and that you're not asking too much, which is, again, something that people worry about. You don't want to ask specifically for a job. You want to ask people for information, even if it's somebody who might have a job for you. It's, if you think about somebody asking you when you're in a position to hire, hey, do you have any jobs for me? That's so much less interesting than somebody who introduces themselves and say, hey, I do this. This is my specialty. Do you know anyone looking to hire? Do you need this in your organization? It opens a conversation so much easier than, hey, do you have any jobs for editors right now? So just keeping that idea of ask for the information, don't ask for the job. Don't take up too much of the other person's time. You want to be respectful while networking. If you ask someone for an informational interview, set a limit on it. Just say, hey, can I have 15 to 20 minutes of your time? We can set up a Zoom interview. I'd just like to talk to you a bit about your company or your job, what it is you do, whatever the goal of that interview is. But if you ask them for 15 to 20 minutes, don't take 30, don't take 45, because they're giving you that valuable time and you don't want to take advantage of it and make them wish that they hadn't. Always, of course, give the other person a chance to speak. It can be, especially when we get nervous, but it can be hard to stop selling yourself in that kind of situation. I'm this, I'm that. Oh, I can do this. But people love to be listened to. It's like any conversation. So make sure that you're giving, that you have that give and take. Ask people for suggestions on how to expand your network. I mean, you're not going to say specifically, hey, how can I expand my network? But you're having a conversation about your career and about what you're looking for and what they need. Ask them who else they know who might be interested in somebody with your skill set, who as somebody else that they know who might be looking to hire an editor, for example. Create a vehicle for follow-up, whether it's, if they promise to send you something because that they know that something is coming up, then if they don't send it, you can follow up and say, hi, can you, just reminding you to send me that job posting. But if they do send it without a prompt, a follow-up is a quick thank you, but it keeps that conversation and that relationship going. Always find ways to reciprocate. You want to not just be taking from your network, you always want to be giving. It doesn't mean that you're expected to also help find them a job if you don't have the network or the connections in a new location. That's fine. One of the easiest ways, and it's actually the next step, but one of the easiest ways to reciprocate is actually with a thank you. People want to be appreciated. People want to know that they helped. And if somebody does have information for you, thank them and tell them that if they ever need anything, that you'd be happy to help, that you'll do your best. It's really that easy. And when you do eventually find a way to reciprocate, it doesn't matter if it's 6 months later, if it's 2 years later, share that contact again. Reach out to someone and say, hey, I remember this conversation we had. I thought this would be interesting to you. And share the information, share the job posting, whatever it might be that connects you back to that person. And again, like I said, send a thank you note, send a thank you letter, call and say thank you, whatever it is. Make sure people know that when they are helping you, that you appreciate it, that they are appreciated. And just some quick questions to ask I wanted to put in here because a lot of people don't know where to start. Obviously, these are going to have to change depending on what you do, who you're talking to, and et cetera, but it's always good to have a place to start. I would like to work as a editor, which is again what I would say. Do you currently have any need for this kind of professional in your company? Are you looking to hire anyone? Or you might start with, well, I've heard a lot about your organization, your department, your company, but can you tell me more about what it is you do or how it is that you accomplish this? Show interest in what they do, especially when you're applying to an organization and you aren't necessarily the subject matter expert in their product. You might be applying to a construction company, but you want to be their accountant. You're not an expert in building energy efficient buildings or whatever it is that they're known for, but that's what they're known for. So ask them about it. Tell them you want to know more and what it is about them that makes them the best in this specific niche. If you're talking about a job, ask them again, what specific skills and profile you're looking for in a candidate for this type of job. Ask how do they want you to apply? If they're talking specifically about a job posting or a need that they have, is this job posted on your website already or not? How would you like me to apply? I can just send you my resume right now by email, or is there a more formal process? So just keep the conversation going and keep it easy, keep it simple. Don't worry too much about trying to sound super smart or trying to impress. You really just want to have good quality conversations. And final point on networking being keep track of your networking in some way. This is a very basic table / spreadsheet that you could use, but it's not the only way and it's not going to work for everybody. But find a way to keep track of who you're talking to and where they work and what you talked about. And, should you be following up and by what date? And what did, is there a job or is there not a job? Was it information that you got? Keep track of it all and make sure you're watching and following up effectively, even just to make sure that you're sending a follow-up thank you, or that you reach out again at some point with something to offer them. Whatever it is that you want to track, incorporate it into your spreadsheet or your notebook, and make sure that you have an effective follow-up strategy. Step 4, we're getting to the actual applying for jobs. And ironically, this is the part where most people start. They skip the labor market research, they skip the thinking about themselves and what they want, and they jump right in and start sending cover letters and resumes. And they end up typically having a much longer job search than those who do that extra bit of planning in the beginning. So when we want to talk about applying, specifically in the context of those of us out coming back to Canada, there's a lot to consider, but we want to look at updating our resumes and cover letters, our career documents, addressing career gaps, which might actually be gaps with no employment or just gaps where we're working completely outside of our area of expertise, because we can't work in our area of expertise in Europe or in a remote location in Canada even. And then thinking about as well as sort of overcoming that bias or discrimination that can happen with military families, where employers don't want to hire someone who's probably going to be gone in another 2 to 3 years. So we'll look at that, generally the effects of the military lifestyle on your career. As military spouses, we all know the deal. We move around all over the country, around the world, every 2, 3, 5 years, depending. And it's completely out of our control. We very rarely get input into where we go next or how long we stay. And because of that, it's rare to transition immediately and directly into a new job at each location. It can happen and it's wonderful when it does, but we're often left with these gaps, especially when we end up either in a remote location with limited employment or in a new country, somewhere out where we're not legally able to be employed, or only legally able to be employed in an organization like MFS or PSP. And that has long-term effects, of course, on your career, but it also affects how you're going to approach every application and interview. Just some quick general stats, and it's really hard to find numbers from Canada, so I've taken US numbers, but from what I've seen and what I've found, they're very similar. So I think it still applies. 16% of military spouses tend to be unemployed, which is more than 4 times the rate of civilians at the time that this research was done, which I believe was 2016. I didn't write that on here. And nearly half of military spouses reported feeling discrimination in their job search, whether it was outright or if they just, you know in your gut that people are not choosing you or not as keen on choosing you because they don't believe you're going to be around very long. So how do you represent and minimize that gap, that time out of the paid workforce on your resume? And how do you address, or do you even address, the fact that you're from a military family? So with the gap specifically, I think there are a lot of sort of bits of advice that you can take. You want to be honest and straightforward. The good news here is that gaps are much more common even outside of military families now. It's just you don't have the same workforce that we did 20, 30, 50 years ago, where everybody got a job and stayed there and was promoted every now and then, and their resume is steady. It very rarely happens. And so hiring managers are more forgiving. But it doesn't mean all of them are forgiving, and it doesn't mean they're forgiving of everything. So you still want to be careful. If you have a gap on your resume, you want to be honest and straightforward about it and just say, career break or living overseas or etc. Don't overshare. I always like to have something in a resume saying, returning to the workforce after a break. But don't take pages. No, not pages. Hopefully you wouldn't. But even lines. You don't want to take that much space to say, well, we moved here and then we moved here, and my kids were young and it just didn't feel like the right time. None of that is relevant. Tell them that you were away, tell them that you were home for a few years taking care of children, but it really shouldn't take more than a line of space. Always put a positive spin on it. It's easy when you're talking, especially to friends, to be negative about it. And you're always thinking, I'm never going to get a job because I've been out of work for 5 years. Don't apologize. Don't put any sort of negativity into it. Find a way to give it a positive spin. If you're living out, you're learning to adapt to different cultures and languages. Usually, you might be in the UK, it's a different culture, but not a different language. Highlight the new skills and the learning that you're doing, and highlight unpaid work. Are you homeschooling? Especially over COVID, everybody was homeschooling. Are you helping out with a family business? Are you volunteering somewhere? What are you doing that isn't paid, that's still using your workplace skills so that they know that they're not rusty? One thing I almost always say is don't use a functional resume. It's one of the things that shows up right away if you sort of Google, what to do with gaps in your resume. Use a functional or skills-based resume without dates and it doesn't show. 80 to 90% of the time, if you use a functional or skills-based resume, the employer, the hiring manager knows right away that you're hiding something. They don't know what it is, and you are less likely to be selected for an interview. Hiring managers generally hate functional resumes. So again, just keep the chronological resume, but be honest and straightforward about the fact that there are gaps, and explain where you were and why you weren't working. And in your writing and in your interview and in every interaction, you have to be confident. You have to believe in yourself, because if you don't, you can't possibly sell yourself. So whatever it might take you to get there, to get that confidence, make sure you have it before you start trying to tell someone else that you're the best person for the job. So now I always tell people, again, think ahead, plan. You're coming to OCAN, keep yourself busy, volunteer, take a course, learn a skill, whatever it might be. But if you're on this training right now, if you're watching this recording, it's probably because you're going back soon. So if you're worried that you didn't do any of this, first of all, you probably did. I'm going to get to that later, but also start now. If you're heading back home later this summer and you really feel you haven't done anything, you still have time to do something. It might have been better to have started yesterday or last month, but you can always start now. So never count yourself out. So if you are planning ahead, or if you're starting now, what can you do to have something to say on your resume for this last few years? You can volunteer. A bit harder to do if you're in the last few months, but not impossible, especially now that things are opening up and we're going to have events. We're going to be doing a little bit more face-to-face. There are probably ways to volunteer. You can take a course. You can learn a new skill. You can read, which, like a lot of people think that if you're going to put something on their resume, it's got to be formal. But you can read a book to learn about marketing. You can read a book to learn about, a new aspect of healthcare or nutrition. Perhaps it's not as powerful as having a university credit in the same subject matter, but it's still knowledge and it's still valid. So think about things that you can do to improve your skills before you start applying. So, and even if it's not in a way that can go onto your resume, if it's in a way that can build your confidence in that skill, it's still valid and it's still important. Just quickly looking at volunteering again. The reasons it's important, volunteering, it doesn't just keep your skills updated, but it demonstrates your determination. It demonstrates that you like to stay busy and that you'll find things to do, which are all qualities that most employers value in a employee. Volunteering can open up new career opportunities. It helps you to meet new people and make connections. If you're volunteering, you're building your network, which again, we've already talked about the importance of that. It gives you a place to be and people to interact with. It keeps you on a routine. Generally, if you're volunteering somewhere regularly, sometimes you're not, which again is just keeping that sort of workplace mindset going, which is important to your confidence and important to that idea that you can sell yourself to an employer as not having done nothing for a few years, which is what you don't want them to get the impression of. It generates new experiences and sometimes skills that you can put on your resume, but it also just feels good. Most volunteers, when they talk about why they do what they do, don't talk about those first few points, and they talk about the fact that it just feels good to give back. And that is important. Again, it goes to that confidence, that idea of contributing to the world. And that's important in your job search, is that confidence. How to find volunteer work? I mean, if it's not right in front of you in your community, you can go online, you can look for local resources. Volunteer Canada has a lot of ideas. There's online volunteering through well-known organizations like CUSO and the UN, but there's also websites like Volunteer Match, which will find a match for you based on your skills and interests with organizations you might never have heard about. And online volunteering can be helping to edit documents, preparing social media posts. It can be reviewing, it can be data entry, it can be so many different things that you can do from your home and stay involved and give back and help someone out somewhere. If not volunteering or on top of volunteering, you can always look at taking a course, at learning something new. And when I say this, I do mean, of course, the most formal way, which is through colleges and universities and online. If you're of course here in Europe and you're trying to get things from Canada, you might be able to take a course at a school where you're posted. But there's also a lot of other online only schools that aren't necessarily accredited, colleges and universities, and MOOCs, or massive open online courses, which we've done a session on through MFS already. Many are free, many are low cost, some are expensive. But the idea being, it doesn't have to be a paid course. It doesn't have to be a university credit course. What you're looking to do is show that you're learn a new skill, keep your confidence up. You don't want to go back to work feeling like you're 3 or 5 years behind and your entire career has changed. So what can you do to keep up to date on skills, right? A course doesn't have to cost money at all in order to be valuable or in order to put it on your resume. If it is a free course, if it is from a school that is not well known, you just really have to be ready to demonstrate that what you learned to an employer. So if you're going to put, an Excel course on your resume, and it's an Excel course that you did for free on YouTube, that's fine. But if they ask you what you know about Excel, you want to be able to back that up by talking about it. Otherwise, then of course it starts to look a bit sketchy. And again, other ways, of course, to learn a new skill. You can just practice. You can do online tutorials. You can log into Word or Excel and get on YouTube. You can download free trials of software. So if there's a new software, a CRM platform or a design software or something, depending on, again, on what it is you do and what you want to learn, you can usually download at least a 7 or 14-day trial or a limited version that might have an unlimited time. And you can learn the basics of a software program that allows you to put that knowledge on a resume. Like, yes, I do know Adobe Photoshop, and you can put in brackets, basic, or you can say, like fundamental knowledge of this, intro knowledge of that. So you're not saying you're an expert in something, but it's a whole lot better than not knowing something at all. So if there is a new skill or a new software that you haven't used in the workplace, you can still find a way to get it on the resume and to learn a bit about it. And again, going back to the idea of volunteering, you might be able to find a volunteer position somewhere that would allow you to learn the new skill that you need to learn, or to practice a new skill that you've learned in one of these free or very low cost courses that you want to back up that learning with. And again, have another way to reinforce the fact that, yes, I do know how to do this. And like I said before, you can read. You can read for fun, or you can read for personal development. First and foremost, the more you read, the better you write. Generally, reading just makes you a better writer. Read books that allow you to explore your career path, explore potential new paths. Make yourself a book list, or even a target number of books to reach by the end of the year, whatever helps to motivate you. if you're heading back to Canada now or in a few months, it might actually just be one book. What is the current trendiest book in your area of expertise that you can make sure that you know and can refer to in an interview? Make sure you read it. You can keep up to date with trends and developments in your industry, again, not necessarily through a book, but through trade journals, through any publications or newsletters that are well known and common within your industry. And so we're talking about all these things and the things you can do. But what if you really are limited in time? What if you didn't plan ahead, you didn't do any of these things, and you go home tomorrow? So, I mean, being proactive is great and it's advised, but you just don't necessarily always have the time because you think about it too late. And that's also fine, because generally speaking, I refuse to believe that anyone, currently on this session, that anyone watching this recording has done nothing of value while they were out Can. The mere fact that you're living outside of Canada is building valuable skills. I sort of mentioned this already. You've adjusted to a new culture. You've managed change. You've helped to manage or plan an international move. You may have supported children or family members through this change. You may have homeschooled children through the pandemic. You might, even before the pandemic, you might have been managing, some homeschool or home classes in French or English for someone who's now studying in a different school. You've managed household budgets, travel budgets, you've planned trips. Many of you are volunteering at your children's international school, whether officially on a committee or with the PTO, or just more informal and helping out in classrooms or doing anything that's needed. This is all volunteering, even though you might not think of it in terms of, oh, I'm, a volunteer with this title with the Canadian Red Cross. No, you're a parent volunteer at the school. So think about that and think about what that means and what skills you're using. You might be on the unit fund committee, or you might help out at community events run by MFS or PSP. So think back on your last 2, 3, 5 years, whatever it might be, and sort of analyze what you've done, identify the skills you've been using, and then start to document that, put that together and figure out how you're going to put that into a resume. What are the transferable skills that you have been using? Because I guarantee you have been using some, even if you weren't actively thinking that you were doing it for the sake of building a resume. And so just to look at that, I wanted to just show a few quick examples because it's sometimes easier to see it instead of imagining it. So here's one with someone who was in the UK. She was a registered nurse and she did some volunteering. And honestly, she didn't do a whole lot of volunteering, but we're not talking here about how many hours a week she did or even any of that. Like this could literally be one day a month. And the point is you're putting the positive spin on it. You're not lying ever, but you're not necessarily including all of the information because you want to show them what you're doing and leave out the information that's less relevant. So helped patients into wheelchairs following endoscopy procedures and transported them to the hospital exit to be picked up by family members. Provided empathetic and reassuring conversation, stripped, cleaned, and remade stretchers and wheelchairs in between appointments. So just a quick list of the skills that this person was doing. And what that does is show some sort of engagement in a healthcare setting while this registered nurse was not actually working. And she'd also done some other volunteering while in Halifax and unemployed. So again, talking about what she did, and that's filling up that gap between 2014 and 2016. This is an older resume, so it looks like there's still a gap, but at the time it was quite up to date. Another one, just an example of how I worked with a client to just be, again, honest and forthright about the fact that she was returning to a career after a bit of a break. In this case, returning to an HR career after a sabbatical to provide family caregiving while engaging in professional development, part-time employment, and volunteer activities. And the rest of the resume would also sort of go into detail about those. But just a quick upfront acknowledgement that as you keep going, reader, you're going to see gaps, and this is why. So again, you're being honest, and nobody has to wonder, well, why were you not working these 3 years? Where were you? Were you sitting at home? Were you unemployed? Were you in jail? We have no idea if you don't tell us. So you want to tell them. Another way that I wrote it for another client, career break, Regina, Saskatchewan, 2011 to 2015. Time away from work as a family caregiver. Continuing to engage in professional development, part-time employment, and volunteer activities. And then in the volunteer section and in the professional development section, there would have been entries between 2011 and 2015, but this kept that gap closed in the actual career timeline. And here we have another one with at the last sentence of that opening paragraph. Returning to work after a short family-focused career break. Really simple. So again, it doesn't have to give much information. What have we got here? Oh, this is one where we just put the volunteering right into the professional experience section because it was a teacher's resume and she had been volunteering in the classrooms over the last, what was it, 6 years or so? I don't know if we mentioned, because again, this is an older example, but her gap was covered by volunteering in a classroom, which as a teacher was valid enough to put right into the professional experience section, and it closed that gap. The last sentence in the opening paragraph also is clear, seeking to re-enter the workforce after a career break to raise a family. Active volunteer with exceptional interpersonal and communication skills. So just presenting it very clearly that yes, I've been away, but I'm coming back. And I believe this is the last example, but again, we put it right in the experience section just to make it clear, why there were gaps, because there were two different ones in this case. Raised 3 children and managed finances and schedules for a family of 5. And then the next point being provided end-of-life care and estate management assistance to an ailing family member. Because this is someone who took time off first to raise her family, back to work for 2 years, and then was off again to care for an elderly family member. So all kinds of reasons that you can be away, including being away on an outcan. Oh, and I forgot to write step 5, but the final step, of course, being interviewing. So you've gotten the resumes and the applications out of the way, and then the final step is you get the call for the interview and you're going to head into an interview situation. So you want to be prepared, you want to think about question types, you want to understand that you're very likely going to be interviewed online because you're in Europe and they're in Canada. There may be an opportunity once you get back to have a face-to-face interview, which you might be more familiar with. And just make sure that you're prepared and you keep your nerves in check and that you're ready to present yourself in the best possible light. Now, as I said before, interviewing itself, I've given a 30-day course in interviewing. I want to talk about the main tips here, but you can always follow up for more information on interviewing because it's not as easy to summarize as other aspects might be. But the idea being, before the interview, before you even step in the room, there's a lot of work to do. You want to research the employer and the company, read their website, not necessarily every page and word for word, but you need to understand their values, their business, and how you can be an asset to them, figure out what their goals are, and be able to speak intelligently about how you think that you can help them achieve those goals. If you have the name of the interviewer, and you should always try to ask if you get a chance, research your interviewer and find out who they are and how long they've been with the company and what they've done before, because you never know when you might have things in common with that person that will help to, first of all, maybe put you at ease, but also to help you frame how you answer a question based on what you know about what they know. You want to read the bio pages in the company's website about your interviewer or find them on LinkedIn. And the second big aspect of this is practice. Practice can be hard and a lot of people don't think they have to practice, but you want to review your resume. You want to make notes on what you want to highlight, but then you want to look up sample interview questions for the role, for the industry, for the company. If they're a big enough company, you might actually be able to look up what kind of questions does Google ask in an interview, but then practice answering those questions. Write out answers first, and then practice actually delivering them. Either record yourself, you can use Zoom or your cell phone or all kinds of things to record yourself and watch, which is painful. I hate doing it myself, but it's very valuable. You want to see how well you present your answer and what you have to practice. Um, and when you're Googling, also make sure, if you're not sure, don't just look up questions, but look up questions and suggested answers. Because it's one thing to practice, but if you're practicing an answer that's not actually what they're looking for, that's not going to do you all that much good. It might make you present it a little bit more confidently, but you're still missing the mark with your answer. And then you want to get your paperwork ready. So first of all, any paperwork that they might have sent you, like your please fill this out and bring it with you. But any important documents that you want to have with you. I go into every interview with a little portfolio, includes a few copies of my resume in case they don't have it and they didn't think to print it. Includes pre-printed reference sheets. So when they ask me if I have references they can contact, I can pull it out and I can hand it to them. But you might also bring with you certificates from training, driver's license, defensive driving, or other types of safety courses, things that might actually be required for the specific job that they'll want to verify. So just get everything together. And if they don't ask for it, you're not out anything. At least you had it. At least you were prepared. And then you want to, as a follow up to the practice, but you want to rehearse pretty much everything. You want to figure out, if it's an in-person interview, how are you going to get there? Where are you going to park? How long will it take? What's the parking going to cost? Make sure you have enough change. What are you going to wear? If you don't know what to wear, you want to try to figure out what the culture of the organization is. You always want to go at least a step above what people would wear day to day. You want to look impressive. You want them to know that you made an effort. So even though you might know that you can wear a decent shirt and jeans to work, don't wear a decent shirt and jeans to the interview. Step it up a little bit. So plan all of this. Make sure if you've got a favorite interview outfit, but you haven't interviewed in 3 years because you've been outcan, make sure it still fits. Make sure it's still comfortable. You don't want to be sitting in too tight pants or like really bad pantyhose and just be uncomfortable during an interview, because that's the worst. You're not helping yourself at all. You just keep yourself comfortable and relaxed so that you can answer the questions much better. So plan everything. If it's an online interview, which again, it's very likely to be, make sure that your computer doesn't have to install an update. Make sure that you've restarted everything, that you've refreshed it, that you've tested your bandwidth, and that you know that you're ready to go. And then the day of the interview, arrive 15 minutes early. So, in a physical location, actually be there 15 minutes early. Try not to be much more than 15 minutes early though either. Like you don't want to be so early that you're in the way, but be there so that first of all, you're not late. That gives you a buffer, but also so that if they're ready to start early because the interview before you is done, then that's convenient for them as well. So you're there early. Same idea if you're logging into Zoom or another similar platform, be there early and they can let you in earlier if they need you, but at least they're not waiting on you, which is going to give a very bad impression. Again, if it's face-to-face, inform the receptionist of who you are, why you're there, who you're meeting, be prepared. Don't show up and realize that you don't remember the name of your interviewer. Walk in professionally, tell them who you are, tell them who you're there to see. Some interviewers will ask the receptionist later, what was this person like when they showed up? Were they professional? Were they polite? How did they treat you? So, you're being interviewed from the minute you walk in. Make sure you have what you need. Bring a bottle of water. You don't know when you might need to have a sip if you start coughing. Be prepared. Have a pen and a notepad. I always like to take notes in an interview. I ask first, but I've never been told no. So it helps me to keep my thoughts in order. So if they ask me a question, I'll jot it down just in shorthand. Or if they ask me a complex question, I might jot down a few bullet points. Again, shorthand, 1 or 2 words, so that I can keep glancing at them and know that my answer is on track and that I'm not blabbing on and I've not gotten off topic. And then otherwise, the day of the interview, you want to do your best to relax and know that you prepared, because we just talked about how to prepare. If you show up prepared, it feels so much better. It sounds obvious again, but it's something that a lot of people don't do. And you can really deal with half of the nerves involved in interviewing if you prepare in advance and you get to walk in confident that they're not going to catch you off guard with a question. And a couple of, again, quick interviewing, sort of final tips. Interviewing is complex. It could be a session in itself. It could be a 30-day course like I've done before. So this is a summary, and contact me for more help if you have any questions. But generally you want to be yourself in an interview. Don't take the time to try to present somebody different. Don't try to be more formal or more relaxed even, or telling jokes. Just be yourself, just relax. Show interest and enthusiasm for the job. It's not enough to just answer the questions well if you don't look like you care. But research the employer, know what they do, know how you will fit, and prepare, rehearse, and do your best with all of that preparation to go in knowing why you're the best candidate for the position, believing that you're the best candidate for the position, which will allow you to tell them why you're the best candidate for the position. And so that is my quick and dirty explanation of all the things to think about when you're in a job search from Europe to Canada. It's a lot. I know it's a lot. And I tried to touch on the most important bits, but please reach out and contact me with any questions that you have specific to your own circumstance, anything that I might have missed. My emails, but both of my email addresses are there on the screen. Possibly better to contact the MFSE.employment education training address, because I'm also headed back to Canada this posting season. I'm here until August. So after I'm gone, you can reach anyone in this position at that address as well. Thank you for your time today. I hope I've helped, and I look forward to answering your questions.